Perhaps you've grown up in the church, or if you haven't, maybe you've heard of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not have any other gods above me, says the Lord. Things like thou shalt not covet, honor your father and mother, things like that. Thou shalt not kill. You know, the 10. We call it the Big Ten sometimes. So those were the 10 commandments that God gave Moses. And actually God gave Moses these commandments multiple times because the tablets broke and all these kind of things. There's a lot of backstory behind that involving frustration and a tantrum, I guess, of Moses. But in ancient times, the ancient Jews actually were so into the Ten Commandments that they didn't want to get anywhere near those Ten Commandments. So they developed a system of 613 commandments or laws. So maybe you know that. Maybe you've heard of that. And basically what you could probably assume, and it goes without saying, that these 613 were just an expansion on the 10. So each one of these particular commandments had, a couple dozen very intricate little laws and details, like, okay, yeah, we say not to kill, but if you do this or this or this, so you understand. So fast forward a little bit, maybe you've heard this story before, where religious leaders, and I'm just going to paraphrase it very quickly, religious leaders come to Jesus and they say, what is the greatest commandment? They were asking that question because that really kind of determines what rabbi you are, what kind of rabbi, what theological camp you come from, or theological, we might be able to say denomination back then. It's like that. So what theological persuasion are you coming from? Some rabbis would say, I think the most important thing is Sabbath. That's my camp that I camp in theologically. Others, like Jesus, would say, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, no matter what rabbi you would ask, the first one would always be the same. It'd be the Shema from Deuteronomy chapter 6. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and sometimes people would add strength. And then what their theological camp was came for number 2. Love your neighbor as yourself. What we find out, and what scholars assume, and what even Jesus implies, is that all of the commandments fall under those categories. And if you were not convinced enough that that's what that was all about, I want to read Romans chapter 13. This is Paul writing about what Jesus said about what the most important commandment is. And even Jesus said, everything hinges upon this. So when a scholar or a theologian looks at the 10 commandments, they say, well, there's like 3, some could say 4 commandments that specifically pertain to God in our personal interaction with God. And the other 6 would be how we display and live out God's love and God's interaction and identifying with God in the world around us. So thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not steal. You get it. So then we fast forward a little bit more to Romans chapter 13, verse 8. And also this is found in Galatians chapter 5. So Paul writing both of them. And he says, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be are summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. This is what Paul was saying about what Jesus said. And he says it again in Galatians chapter 5 in more concise words. But we are seeing, what is the law for? It's to show us how we are to interact with God and how we are to interact with others. It's this cross-shaped relationship. Our relationship with God should flow out onto the world around us. That's just my little tidbit for today. Have a great day.